Now this right here is the Fydetab Duo. What it is a Microsoft Surface-like form factor with a Chrome OS-like operating system. This right here is an ARM-based tablet with some rather impressive specifications, but what is really impressive about it to me is the hackability factor of it. FydeOS is the factory default operating system, which we will be covering in just a minute. In addition to that, they have OpenFyde, which is the developer and open source version of FydeOS. But in addition to that, the bootloader and all that's unlocked, so you could go ahead and flash really whatever you want to it. So theoretically, we can flash popular Linux distributions to this, as well as various builds of the Android open source project. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, this item right here is a prototype. On their little Indiegogo page here, we can see the current stage, which is in the prototyping stage, so that's what I'm assuming this is. And just because of how new this is, the company behind it is still actually working on all the documentation and everything. Later on, we will be trying to flash something else to this, but I'm going to be going off of solely the instructions of an email that I got. So before we talk about specifications and software, we first need to talk about what you actually get with the thing and what came in the box, at least that I received. It showed up in a standard branded white box. And when we first open it up, we actually have the tablet front and center in a little protective bag. It has a little sticker on it with the serial number and some of the specifications. After the tablet, we go ahead and remove this white box. It has some of the accessories. And now going further into the box, you can see that it definitely has had better days. This is a prototype model, so hopefully the actual consumer packaging will be a little stronger. And this box just kind of folds open, and the very first thing we get is the magnetic back plate, which here, if I take this off, the one that I happen to get is red, but there is a gray option if you're not a very colorful individual. The actual magnet itself is fairly strong, as you can see here, and if I go ahead and take this off, the inside is just standard plastic, and there's the little hinge right there, which seems to be pretty strong, and it holds place really well when you go ahead and bend it. And then under the back cover, we have the keyboard. Now both of these are a soft cloth kind of material. It's really nice. The keyboard does have a little more flex than I would prefer, but for what it is, it works really good. The keys are nice to touch, and it's very on par when it comes to the overall feel and quality of some of the competitors. You can see right here how it connects to the actual device, and because everything's magnetic, it just goes ahead and pop right into place, and you can have it either flat or as an additional magnet, which clips to the tablet, so you could have it at a slight angle for typing comfort. Additionally, in the box, you've probably already seen it on the keyboard, we have a stylus. But I'm going to be blunt. I haven't been able to find a battery for this in my town. I live in a very small town. So when I do find one, I'm going to make a little YouTube short covering its functionality. So make sure you ring that bell so you don't miss that. On the stylus, the build quality looks nice. It's got a pressure sensitive tip, 2 buttons, and a little thing so you could go ahead and clip it onto whatever you need. And additionally in the box we have a USB type C to C, and of course we have an AC adapter. This one's kind of cool. It's a looks like an Asus ROG branded one, so that's interesting it came with this. Again, prototype, it was probably just extras. Personally, for charging this device, I've been using the sponsor of today's video. Anker and their GAN Prime lineup of multi-device chargers are some of the best that I've ever used. Now personally, out of what they sent me, this 733 right here is by far my favorite. It's sleek, compact, 10,000 milliamp battery, and a built-in plug making charging the thing super easy. This thing has a high max output of 65 watts. Here we are, featuring 2 USB-Cs and a single USB-A. This is the one that I've been using quite a bit, jumping back and forth between my office and school. And of course, the GAN Prime series has a lot of cool stuff, including their 615 USB power strip here. For me, this is the perfect compact desk charging station. 2 AC outlets, 2 USB-Cs, USB-A, and some fantastic cable management. And of course, they have basic chargers. This 737 here can deliver a blistering 120 watts between the 2 USB-Cs and USB-A. This entire lineup supports Power IQ, which will automatically detect various power requirements between your devices and will dynamically distribute output between them in real time to deliver faster charging and increase efficiency. So if you're interested in these or anything else in this lineup, go ahead and check out the link down below. So now that my device is completely unboxed, we can proceed to talk about some of the specific specifications. And thankfully we have their website here to go ahead and help us out with that. It's a pretty good website, I do have to give them that. Right next to pre-order we have the specific tech specs, and here's the gray and the red that I was just talking about. The processor is the Rocket Chip 3588 which has 4 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. Additionally, there are 4 cores dedicated to the actual GPU, so overall it should give us some pretty good performance. Skipping down a little bit, we have 8 gigabytes of LPDDR4 RAM, which in my opinion for modern hardware, 8 gigabytes should be kind of like the default minimum for just about everything. It has 128 gigabytes of eMMC flash storage. It features Wi-Fi 6 compatibility as well as Bluetooth 4.2. Now on the actual device, it is pretty simple here. There's really not a lot going on. On the top of the device here, we have our power button, which also doubles as a fingerprint reader. Looking over here, we have our speaker. On the bottom, all we have is the magnets for plugging in the actual keyboard. And on the left side of the device is where we have just about everything else. Including the other speaker, we have our volume rocker here. There's a little spot right here for an SD and SIM card, which I have tested. It doesn't work as of yet. I threw a Mint Mobile SIM card in there. We have aux out. Believe it or not, you can plug in headphones. There's a little LED indicator and a single USB-C. I do wish there was like 2 of these at least, but this USB-C can do just about everything, whether that be the actual external monitors, powering the thing, whatever. The whole thing comes in a thickness of about 8.5 millimeters, and the tablet by itself has a weight of 755 grams. The display comes in about 12.3 inches. It is a 2K display, meaning we will have 2560 by 1600 when it comes to the pixel ratio. The actual panel here is an IPS display, and it does look rather good. The battery of this guy is 42 watt hours. It boasts all-day battery life, and I do have to agree with that. And the standby battery life is rather impressive. When I first set this up, I had it just on standby for probably about 3 days or so, and it knocked off about 15% of the battery capacity, which that is really nice. And I've been using it off and on for a couple days, and on the days that I do use it as kind of my primary device, it does get me through basically the entire day. What we need to do is go ahead and talk about the operating system, which I have their website right here. This is FydeOS. Simple, swift, secure. If I scroll down, lots of app options. I'll talk about more on Linux and the Android in just a sec. Here we are, here's their GitHub. OpenFyde. This right here is the open source version, which isn't stock on here, which in the simplest terms possible, FydeOS is de-googled Chrome OS, which for many of you, that might be one of the thing you're looking for. And their non-open source version here actually has some pricing. They have different versions for VMware, for PC, for you, and enterprise solutions. Now with that, let's talk about actually opening it up and the initial setup process. Now this is footage from when I did initially set up the device. First it welcomes you in, welcome to your FydeOS device. From there you go ahead and connect to your Wi-Fi network. And of course this is the non-open source version, so they are going to have a end user agreement that you have to kind of scroll through and agree to. But a really cool thing in that user agreement, it actually specifies that if you don't want to use the system, you could go ahead and just wipe it off and use something else. Once you do agree to it, you have a couple options. You can sign in, create an account with FydeOS, or you could do what I initially did, which was actually creating an offline account. What you do by clicking use local account in the bottom left corner, and then you go through a simple setup process, username, password, all that fun stuff. From there you set up your fingerprint, so you can just unlock your device with that. You go ahead, choose a pin, and then it's going to take you through a basic tutorial about gestures and all that. And then from there, boom, you're booted right into the desktop environment. So with that, we're going to dive onto the device, kind of go through what we get out of the gate here. Alright, and here we are in the actual FydeOS operating system. Now this I've been using for a couple days, so I have experience with some of the pros and cons thus far in these early stages of development. And like I said, this is basically a fork of Chrome OS, so you're going to have basically all the same overall functionality, settings, utilities, tools, and if you're familiar with Chrome OS, you're going to be very familiar with how this works. Overall touchscreen, you can see it is very responsive. I could go ahead and double tap to snap that. This is our system settings. You will be missing some things, but you can see right here I currently am signed into a Google account. Despite the fact that it is de-googled, like I said, you can have that option to go ahead and sign in. I actually switched to this instead of using the offline account because I wanted to have some things automatically signed into, such as over here if I go to Google Drive, you can see I have just about everything automatically synced up ready to go, which is very handy. Like Chrome OS, under my files, I have my downloads, a separate directory for Android and Linux files, and I went ahead and played with both of these, and we're going to be talking more about those in just a second. And when it comes to pre-included applications, there are a couple, really not much. Everything from Instagram over I added, so this had Chromium, Camera, Store, Android, they have their own RDP client, and if I scroll down here, we have our settings and the web store. Now, real quick, I want to dive into their store just to kind of show you some of the things that you can get. Right here under Made by FydeOS, this is some of their applications. They have the remote desktop viewer. They have their own OneDrive application. Out of all these, though, the only thing I tried out, which is the OpenG apps, which is the curated collection of Google applications, so you can actually get the Play Store, so all the dependencies and everything automatically work. Now, before I realized this was in here, I actually tried to get it set up myself to nothing but failure. And then I noticed this here, and it was very nice. Under Essentials here, it starts turning into the normal Chrome store, so you have a lot of various web browser extensions, web tools, web apps. If we go to this tool, you could see some of the options here. So basically just better integrating websites into your system. If we go down here under Android apps, they have a couple curated and preloaded that work very well with the system, but of course we can access the normal Google Play Store. And if you do want to keep this device de-Googled, I did go ahead and test out applications such as F-Droid and other APK downloading suites, and they all generally work fine, but there are some issues here and there as some of the dependencies aren't going to be perfect. And before we dive more into Android, let's quickly open up Chromium and test some of the system performance. So what I'm going to do here, first I'm going to go to the good old website TechHut.tv and just kind of show you some of the overall responsiveness. It's not absolutely perfect, but if we do scroll, you can kind of see it is fairly fluid. There's a little chop here and there, but nothing too major. So we can go ahead and zoom in, read. Overall, it is a rather decent experience. Now, let's go ahead and head over to the good old youtube.com. And we got some crab rave going, and you can see there are a couple dropped frames. And overall, it is kind of a little choppier than I'd prefer. We are currently sitting at 1080p at the moment. So at least in their native Chrome browser, we're seeing about 200 to the 1200 frames being dropped. And if I do bump it up to the native resolution, which is going to be roughly 1440p, the ratios seem to be roughly the same. I do have to say the screen does look absolutely phenomenal. And I will note later on in this video, we're going to see a little improvement in the video playback here. Now, one thing you may be interested in is Android applications. Like I said earlier, we do have the Play Store available to us, and most other methods do work. When you install this OpenG apps application, you just launch it, install it, your device reboots, and then you're generally good to go. If I open this up, we do have access to a good amount of the Android settings, not everything, but a good amount. And just to show you that the Play Store works fine, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Again, the Play Store does not come pre-included, and it looks like my Play Store has disappeared, but I still have some of the applications I downloaded earlier, so I guess I'm going to need to reinstall it. So let's reinstall, go next, install, okay. Note I did just perform a system update on FydeOS, so that might be the reason why the Play Store disappeared on me. Alright, just rebooted, and we can see that the Play Store is now there. So just required a little reinstall after the system update, and I'm going to have to sign in again. Here's our little Google Services prompt, so I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And here we are into the full Play Store, and it's super easy to go and grab applications just like you normally would. We have applications here, so I could grab something like Krita, for example, hit install, and it'll just run through that normal installation process. Krita, wonderful open source application by the KDE development team, definitely would recommend. Now, while that installs, I do kind of want to show you some of the Android applications that I've already installed on here. First of all, I'm going to start with the main issue that I've noticed, and the issue is video playback in any Android application does not seem to be working as it should. So if I go try to start something up here, let's hit play, and we get nothing. Eventually the application will just crash itself out. And the show isn't just Jellyfin. I'll open up something like Instagram, and then under Reels here you can see it's just, the videos just don't play. But other than that, I haven't had any significant issues, and I could kind of show that by opening up an application. Let's open up this hockey game real quick. And this game does perform better without the keyboard, so it's as simple as popping this off, and the tablet will automatically switch to tablet mode. So then I could go ahead and use these controls. You can see it's really smooth. Everything just works pretty good. So boom, boom, boom. And this is a random game I installed for this demo, and I mean, it's a pretty good game. And you could actually utilize the keyboard and mouse for a lot of these games, so it's more of a PC-like gaming experience. So using WASD here, you just go ahead and play this, move my mouse out of the way. And overall, it is a rather solid gaming experience. The specs are fairly decent, so it should be. And I will note I'm also screen recording right now, so that might be responsible for a dropped frame here or there. Now the real question being, how do Android applications perform? So I have actually installed a few, and it's just the same exact process as setting up normal Android on a Chrome OS device like this. You enable it through settings, pick your storage, and then it gives you full access to a Linux terminal, which I do believe is running Debian in the background. So there we go, some full Linux container action, and you can see I don't have htop, so I could just install it with a sudo apt install htop, enter. And now if I go ahead and run htop, you can see it's working good. Linux itself is using very little system resources, which is always nice. And then of course I just click quit to quit out of there. And I don't really need the terminal to open up any other applications, so I can show you what I've pre-installed or what I've already installed and tested out. We have the VLC media player, we have GIMP, and I went ahead and threw in a larger application such as QGIS, just to see if something with a boatload of dependencies is going to load fine, which as you can see here, it has indeed. So if I go ahead and open up something super simple, you will get little graphical things like this where things just kind of black out on you, but it's all still there and it still works. I've opened up OpenStreetMap here. Okay. If I move the window a little bit, usually that kind of remedies the issue. But as you can see, I'm now zooming in to Washington using OpenStreetMaps, and I could do QGIS type activities directly through here if need be. So it's really nice that works. I'm going to go ahead and close this out, disregard. If I open up something like a VLC media player, give that a copy, I'm going to drop it into Linux, so paste that on in there, and there we go. So theoretically, we should be able to go to Brandon, we can see that screen recording, and I could open that up and view it with VLC. So here's just evidence that media playback through the Linux subsystem does work a little bit better than Android. Now, of course, that's not all I tested. GIMP is a rather useful tool to have. It's a very extensive photo editor. And I've actually made like 2 thumbnails in here, and I have not run into a single issue, except for kind of file management. You have to make sure and put downloads into the Linux folder, but that's really about it. Overall, it's snappy. It has settings to make a lot of these buttons bigger. I just reinstalled this a little while ago, so I don't have all my exact customizations that I had prior to that. But you can see if I run something that's moderately intensive, such as the lava render, it's really not any slower or anything like that than running it on something that's Linux native with a device of the similar specifications. I'm going to zoom in real quick here just to show you. It doesn't have the real-time kind of movement. You can see that little dot that shows up to kind of show me where things are going to be, and overall it is really snappy. Now, speaking of snappy, I did run Geekbench on a couple different systems, so we're able to compare it to what they at least present on their website. And really, that's all there is to it when it comes to this system. Basically, all the features and functionality that you'd expect out of a Chrome OS type environment, with the availability to do what we're about to do right now. Now, it is at this point that we're going to start diving into some unfamiliar territory for myself, because we're going to try flashing some other operating systems on this thing, because for at least me personally, that is one of the main selling points of this tablet. So now for the flashing process, we're going to start off by flashing an Android image here. And they're going to have a wiki soon, but this is what I have to work with at the moment, which is an email covering some of the instructions. They do have tools for Linux, macOS, and Windows, which is very nice, and apparently the Windows one is a GUI tool, so that's super handy. The Linux upgrade tools right here, and what I did is I just downloaded this entire repo, and it is sitting currently in my documents folder here under tool. What we're going to do real quick is quickly flash the Android image just to go ahead and test that out, and then we're going to be diving into the Debian image to go ahead and test that. But on the device here, I have it completely powered down. I have USB-C to USB-A plugged into the computer that I'm going to be transferring the image from, and all I need to do really is hold down the up button or the volume up button and press the power button. And now we can see that it's not going to do anything. The screen has slightly illuminated just a little bit, and that means we are ready to go. So what I'm going to do is go into the directory in which I have my tool. So I'm going to open that up. And I already have the command that I ran a little bit ago. And then we're going to do UF and point that to the image that we're going to flash. In this case, it's going to be the Android open source project. All we do from there, hit enter, type in our sudo password, and there we go. If it doesn't detect, you'll get a little warning here, but if you see it says downloading the image there, that's how you know that it is working completely fine. And then when it's done, you'll see firmware upgrade complete, and we can see over here we do have some feedback, and we will get the Android boot screen here. And this is, of course, full Android 12. One thing I need to do real quick is enable auto rotation. So let's go ahead, enable that, and it will flip to our normal scale here. And when it comes to Android on this device, it is super bare bones. You don't really have the Play Store, any Google services. This is just the Android open source project. So you have Basic Explorer, you have the WebView browser tester, which is the web browser we get. Really not a lot, and you can spend some time to go through here and add everything that you're going to be needing. Let's go to TechHut.tv, shall we? Oh, of course we do need to connect to internet, and it does work fine. Everything's kind of disabled out of the gate on this. And then there we go, we're now in the system, and it is actually a pretty quick interface. I mean, this is just good hardware in general. I say this every time, the YouTube homepage without being logged into an account is just the definition of a nightmare. On here, this is such a bloated version of Android. We have 0 dropped frames right now. It's going pretty good. Bumping this up to 1440p. You can see it's really just running good. And of course, being that this is just like bare bones Android, it's going to take a little bit of tinkering and work to get everything that you're going to need to make this a fully functioning system, but this is nice. So with that, it's time to go ahead and try some Linux. And here we are in the Linux distribution that is currently available to us, the Debian image. And I will note the Fyde team hasn't really had an opportunity to fine-tune this yet, specifically to this tablet. And for that being the case, I mean, it is running pretty good. It's a little glitchy, some things don't work. I can't really install any packages at the moment. I think it's locked down to prevent breakage. And this distro is really just a generic Debian image from Rocketship for their processors. And on the Fyde tab here, everything is generally pretty snappy. For example, if I go ahead and open up the web browser, if I can properly click on it, there we go. We got some crab brave opened up and ready to go, and the performance of just this alone is actually quite impressive. I'm going to go ahead and full screen it, give it a play. And this is at 1080p, and right now there are 0 dropped frames. I'm going to go ahead and bump it up a bit to the native resolution, which is 1440p roughly. And again, incredibly smooth and rather impressive. Actually, a slightly better YouTube playback performance than the actual FydeOS operating system. And just overall, everything's snappy. There's no lag. I can't really test too much. One, this is an ARM system, so it's hard to find like app images for like games and whatnot. And two, I'm kind of locked out of actually installing anything, but this does give me hope for other third-party projects such as Ubuntu Touch to come along and make really clean Linux distributions for this device. When it comes to the system resources utilization, if I open up htop not found, I'm pretty sure top is installed on everything. Here we go. The CPU seems to be around 6%. There's under 2 gigs of RAM utilization, so it is a little high, but I also have a YouTube here at 1440p and all that. And with the 8 gigs, that's really not too big of an issue. Everything worked out of the box. Well, almost everything. The Wi-Fi worked, keyboard works, the display is at the proper resolution. Touch does not work at the moment, but again, the Fyde team hasn't even really touched this image. I mean, you saw internet playback is obviously working, so there's no issues with the media codecs. Just overall with how easy this was to flash and all that, I'm really looking forward to this. And I will note in terms of battery life, I've actually had this unplugged for probably an hour, using it, trying to install things, trying to test things, and we are just under 90%. So even in a unoptimized Linux environment like this, the battery life is still kind of what we're getting in the stock operating system. Now, one thing I am going to talk about real quick is this compared to JingOS, because JingOS, or the JingTab or JingPad, I forgot, that device was kind of similar, had the same kind of philosophy, except for the main issue that the Jingling team had was they really put a lot of their effort and focus into developing their Linux operating system for their tablet. Now, where these guys have an advantage is they are forking an operating system that already works perfectly fine on a tablet. So the likelihood that this product can actually succeed in the market is much higher in my opinion, and that makes me very hopeful for the entire future of this. So that is the Fydetab Duo. Let me know what you think. Is this something that you are interested in? I know I definitely am, at least when it comes to the future development and what it ends up becoming. And of course, as this thing progresses, I will probably be making a couple more videos on it because I'm definitely looking forward to it. And with all that, I do hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. And goodbye.